The room went silent the second I opened the envelope.
It was Mother's Day.
Pink balloons floated near the ceiling. A chocolate cake sat between my hands, the candles still smoking. My grandchildren stood in front of me, smiling the way kids do when they think they've done something kind. But the moment the paper slid into my palm, I felt the air change. I looked up. My son Mark's face drained of color. His wife, Elaine, froze like someone had called her name in a dream. My heart started to pound so loud I thought everyone could hear it. I unfolded the letter, read the first line, and my breath caught in my throat. That was the moment everything broke open, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. Stay with me. Watch, like, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. You will want to hear every word of this story. I never planned revenge. I never thought I would need it. I was just a mother. Then a grandmother. A woman who baked cookies, folded laundry, and tried to keep the peace. My name is Margaret Lewis, and for most of my life, I believed that love, patience, and silence could fix anything. I was wrong. Let me take you back, before the envelope, before the pale faces, before the truth landed in my hands like a blade. I raised Mark by myself. His father left when Mark was 6. One morning, his clothes were gone from the closet, his toothbrush missing from the cup. No note. No goodbye. Just empty space. I worked 2 jobs after that. I cleaned offices at night and waited tables during the day. I missed school plays. I missed birthdays. But I never missed loving my son. Mark grew up fast. Too fast. He learned how to smile when he was hurting. He learned how to say, "I'm fine," when he wasn't. When he met Elaine in college, I was happy for him. She was pretty and smart, with perfect teeth and a soft voice. She hugged me the first time we met and called me Mom before we were even close. I thought that meant something. They married young. I paid for what I could. I wore a simple blue dress and cried happy tears. When the grandchildren came, first Lily, then Noah, I felt like the world had given me a second chance. I moved closer so I could help. I babysat for free. I cooked meals and washed bottles. I rocked the babies to sleep when Elaine said she was too tired. At first, it felt good to be needed. Then the small cuts began. Elaine started correcting me in front of the kids. "We don't do it that way anymore, Margaret." She rolled her eyes when I told stories about Mark's childhood. Mark laughed it off. "That's just Elaine," he'd say. "You know how she is." I swallowed my feelings. I always did. When Mark lost his job, I gave them money. When they needed a bigger house, I helped with the down payment. I didn't ask questions. I didn't keep track. I trusted them. They were my family. The day my knee gave out at work, everything shifted. I slipped on a wet floor and fell hard. The pain was sharp and deep. The doctor said I needed surgery. Recovery would take months. I called Mark from the hospital, my voice shaking. He sounded busy. He said he'd call back. He didn't. Elaine texted instead. "We can't help right now. Too much going on with the kids."
No call.
No visit. I stared at the phone until my eyes burned. After surgery, I couldn't work. Bills piled up. I sold my car. I stopped buying fresh food. I lived on soup and toast. When I asked Mark if he could help me fill out some paperwork, he sighed like I was a problem he didn't have time for. "Mom, you'll figure it out," he said. I did figure it out. I learned how to be alone. Months passed. I healed slowly. I saw my grandchildren less. Elaine said they were busy. When I did see them, they hugged me tight, like they were afraid I might disappear. Lily whispered once, "Mommy says you're sick because you didn't plan right." I smiled and said nothing. But something cold settled in my chest. The first real shock came in the mail. A letter from the bank. It said my savings account was overdrawn. That couldn't be right. I hadn't touched it. I called the number, my hands shaking. The woman on the phone told me there had been several large withdrawals. She read the dates. They matched the months I was in the hospital. I felt dizzy. I asked how the money was taken out. "Authorized user," she said. My son's name was on the account. I called Mark. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. I texted. Nothing. When he finally called back days later, his voice was tight. Mom, you said we could use it if we needed it, he said. I never said that. Elaine took the phone. We're family, she said. Why are you making this a big deal? I hung up without answering. That night, I cried until my chest hurt. Then I did something I had never done before. I started writing things down.
Dates. Amounts.
Words they said. Things that didn't make sense. I didn't know why I did it. I just felt like if I didn't, the truth would slip away.
Time moved on.
I went back to work part-time. I learned how to live smaller. I smiled at holidays. I brought gifts I couldn't afford. Elaine accepted them without looking at me. Mark avoided my eyes. And still I said nothing. Then last year, Lily asked me a question that changed everything. Grandma, she said, swinging her legs under the table, why does Mommy cry at night when she thinks we're asleep? My heart stopped. I asked what she meant.
She says she's scared you'll tell, Lily said.
Tell about the papers. I felt the room tilt. What papers, sweetheart? I asked, keeping my voice soft. Lily shrugged. I don't know. Daddy says Grandma doesn't need to know. That was the moment I understood something important. They were hiding more than money. I didn't confront them.
Not yet.
I waited. I listened. I watched. I found a free legal clinic at the library and asked questions without giving names. I learned words I had never needed before.
Fraud.
Power of attorney.
Forgery.
I went through old files. I found documents I didn't remember signing. My signature looked right, but something felt off. Too neat. Too careful. I kept my mouth shut. I baked cookies. I hugged my grandchildren. I planned. When Elaine announced a big Mother's Day lunch at their house, I almost said no. My knees still ached. My pride was tired. But Lily called me herself. Please come, Grandma, she said. We made something for you. So, I went. The house was loud and bright. Pink plates. White flowers. Elaine hugged me like a stranger. Mark kissed my cheek and stepped away. The kids handed me a wrapped box. Inside was a card with hearts drawn in crayon. I smiled and thanked them. Then Lily said, There's one more thing. Noah ran off and came back with an envelope.
Plain. White.
My name written in careful block letters. My stomach dropped. Daddy told us to give it to you last, Lily said. Mark shook his head fast. No, I didn't. Elaine grabbed his arm. Too late. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter.
Typed.
Official. I read the first line, and the room started to spin. My grandchildren watched me, confused. Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Elaine's hand flew to her throat. The letter explained everything. The money. The papers. The lies. And at the bottom there was something else.
Proof.
My hands trembled as I lifted my eyes from the page. Everyone was staring at me now. The candles on the cake flickered, still burning. I felt calm.
Too calm.
I folded the letter slowly. Then Elaine screamed my name. And that was when the real nightmare began. Elaine screamed my name like I had struck her. Margaret, she cried, rushing toward me, her hands shaking. Give me that letter. That's private. That's a mistake. Mark finally found his voice. Mom, please, he said, stepping in front of the children. This is not what it looks like. The room felt too small, too hot. Everyone was talking at once, but I heard nothing except the sound of my own heartbeat. I looked down at the envelope again, just to make sure the words were still there. They were.
Clear. Cold. Real.
I raised my hand. Stop, I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady.
Strong.
The room went quiet again. Lily clutched my leg. Grandma, she whispered. Are you mad? I knelt slowly, my knees screaming in pain, and brushed her hair back. No, sweetheart, I said softly. I'm not mad at you. You did nothing wrong. Elaine took a step back. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, like she was thinking about running. Margaret, she said, lowering her voice, let's talk in private. I stood up straight. No, I said. We will talk right here. Mark swallowed hard. Mom, You're scaring the kids.
I looked at him then.
Really looked.
At the man I raised.
At the boy who used to crawl into my bed after bad dreams. My chest ached. You should have been scared long before today, I said. I turned back to the children. Go play outside for a few minutes, I told them gently. Grandma and Mommy and Daddy need to talk. Elaine shook her head fast. No, they can stay. Please, I said, meeting Lily's eyes. Just for a little bit. Lily hesitated, then took Noah's hand. They walked outside, the screen door slamming shut behind them. The second they were gone, Elaine's face changed. You had no right, she hissed. You were never supposed to see that. Mark rubbed his temples. Mom, this got out of hand, he said. We were going to fix it.
I laughed. A short, bitter sound.
Fix it?
I asked.
You stole from me. You signed papers in my name. You put my house at risk. Elaine crossed her arms. You're being dramatic, she said. We needed help. You had money. That money was for my care, I said. For when I can't walk. For when I can't work. You knew that. Mark looked away. I pulled the letter out again. This, I said, tapping the page, is from a lawyer. One I didn't hire. It explains how my power of attorney was used while I was in the hospital. It explains how my savings were moved. It explains how my signature was copied. Elaine's lips went white. Who sent that? She whispered. I didn't know at first, I said. But then I saw the second page. I pulled out the paper underneath. A copy of an email. I continued. Elaine, do you remember writing to your sister about how old people never notice until it's too late? Mark's head snapped up. What? Elaine lunged for the papers. I stepped back. You told her everything, I said. How you planned it. How you used my trust. How you thought I would be too weak to fight back. Mark stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Elaine, he said slowly. Is that true? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her shoulders slumped. You said it was fine, she said quietly. You said your mom wouldn't need it. I felt something crack inside me. So this was both of you, I said. Not just one mistake. Not just stress. A plan. Mark sank into a chair. I didn't think it would hurt you like this, he said. I thought you'd understand. I shook my head. Understanding is not the same as forgiving. Elaine suddenly straightened. You can't prove anything, she snapped. Those papers don't mean. I smiled then. A small, sad smile. Oh, I said. But that's not all. I reached into my purse. My hands were calm now. I pulled out a small flash drive and set it on the table. What's that? Mark asked. A recording, I said. From a few months ago. Elaine, you didn't know your phone was still connected to the speaker when you called your sister from my kitchen. Elaine's eyes went wide. You recorded me? I recorded my own home, I said. Where you forgot I was listening. Mark stood up fast. Mom, please don't. I already did, I said. Elaine backed away from the table. You wouldn't, she whispered. I would, I said. And I will. The front door creaked open. Lily and Noah stepped inside, laughing unaware. Elaine turned to them, her voice sharp. Go back outside. They froze. I picked up the flash drive. This ends now, I said. One way or another. Mark looked at me, tears in his eyes. What are you going to do? I opened my mouth to answer. That was when a loud knock slammed against the front door. 3 sharp knocks. Everyone jumped. Elaine's face twisted in fear. Mark whispered, Did you call someone? I didn't answer. The knocking came again, harder this time. And through the door, a deep voice called out, Mrs. Lewis? This is the police. We need to speak with you. Elaine let out a broken sob as Mark turned slowly toward me. What did you do, Mom? He asked. I met his eyes, holding the flash drive tight in my hand. And the door began to open. The door opened slowly, like the house itself was afraid of what would come next. 2 police officers stood on the porch. One was tall with gray hair. The other was younger, his hand resting near his belt. Behind them, The afternoon sun looked too bright for a moment like this. Yes, I said. Mrs. Margaret Lewis? The older officer asked. That's me. We need to speak with you about a report, he said gently. May we come in? Elaine made a small sound, almost like a whimper. Mark didn't move. I stepped aside. Please, I said. Come in. The officers walked into the living room. The cake, the balloons, the gifts, they all looked wrong now, like props from a play that had gone bad. What is this about? Mark asked, his voice tight. The younger officer looked at him, then back at me. Mrs. Lewis, did you file a complaint regarding financial abuse? Elaine grabbed Mark's arm. She's confused, Elaine said quickly. She's been under a lot of stress. I felt a fire rise in my chest. I am not confused, I said. And yes, I filed a report. The room went silent again. Mark's mouth fell open. Mom, when? After I found out, I said. After I confirmed everything. Elaine shook her head hard. This is insane, she said. You can't just send the police over because you're upset. The older officer raised a hand. Ma'am, we're just here to ask questions. Elaine laughed sharply. Ask questions? In front of my children? Your children are in the kitchen, I said quietly, eating cookies. Elaine turned on me. You planned this, she hissed. No, I said. You did. The officer pulled out a small notebook. Mrs. Lewis, he said, can you tell us when you first noticed the problem? I took a breath. My hands shook a little, but my voice stayed steady. I told them about the bank letter, the missing money, the documents I didn't sign, the email, the recording. Elaine kept shaking her head over and over. Mark stared at the floor. Do you have copies of the documents? The younger officer asked. Yes, I said. And a lawyer. That word made Elaine gasp. You hired a lawyer? Mark asked softly. Yes, I said. After months of silence. Elaine stepped forward. You went behind our backs. I looked at her. You went into my account while I was in surgery. The officers exchanged a look. Mrs. Lewis, the older one, said, we'll need to take statements. This may take time. Elaine suddenly dropped into a chair. This is going to ruin us, she whispered. Do you know what you're doing? I nodded.
Yes.
I do. Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were red. Mom, he said, why didn't you come to me? I did, I said. You didn't listen. The younger officer cleared his throat. We may need to speak with your wife separately, he said to Mark. Elaine shot up. No, she snapped. I want a lawyer. That's your right, the officer said calmly. The front door closed behind them after they finished their notes. They said they would be in touch soon. Too soon. When the door shut, the house felt empty, even with all of us inside. Elaine rounded on me. You humiliated me, she said. On Mother's Day. I smiled sadly. You chose the day, I said. You told the children to give me the envelope. Her face went blank. What envelope? Mark asked slowly. I turned to him. You didn't know? I asked. Elaine's eyes flicked to his. The envelope, I continued, was mailed to your house. Addressed to me. Inside was the lawyer's letter. And copies of everything. Mark frowned. Elaine, why was that mailed here? Elaine's voice shook. I thought if she got it here, I could control it. Mark stood up fast. Control it how? She didn't answer. Lily's voice floated in from the kitchen. Grandma? I walked toward her and knelt down again. Yes, baby? Mommy is crying, she whispered. I hugged her tight. Everything will be okay, I said. I hoped it was true. That night, I went home alone. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was my lawyer. Margaret, she said, we have a problem. My heart dropped. What kind of problem? There's been a new filing, she said. Elaine and Mark are claiming you gave them full permission. They're saying you're mentally unfit. I sat up straight. What? They filed for control, she continued. They're asking the court to assign guardianship. The room spun. They're trying to take my rights? I whispered. Yes, she said. And they moved fast. I hung up slowly. They weren't just defending themselves. They were coming for me. And I realized then, this was no longer about money. This was war. I sat on the edge of my bed long after the call ended, my phone still warm in my hand. Guardianship. The word echoed in my head like a threat. It meant they were saying I could not think for myself. It meant they wanted control of my life, my money, my home, everything. It meant they were willing to erase me to save themselves. I did not cry. Instead, I stood up and opened the notebook I had been keeping for months. The one with dates, notes, copies, and memories. I placed it on the table like a weapon. If this is war, I whispered to myself, then I will not lose. My lawyer, Susan, came over that afternoon. She was calm, sharp, and kind. She wore glasses and spoke clearly, like every word mattered. They're claiming you're forgetful, she said. That you agreed verbally. That you don't remember. I let out a short laugh. I remember everything. I know, she said. And that's why we're ready. She asked me questions. Simple ones. Dates. Names. Events. I answered all of them without pause. She nodded, pleased. We'll request a full evaluation, she said. Medical. Financial. Psychological. Good, I said. I have nothing to hide. That night, I got a text from Mark. Mom, please stop this. Elaine is sick with worry. Mom, we can fix it quietly. Mom, you're tearing the family apart. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. Me, you tore it apart when you chose silence over truth.
He didn't reply.
2 days later, Elaine showed up at my door. I hadn't invited her. She stood there with no makeup on, her eyes red and swollen. She looked smaller somehow, like fear had eaten away at her. Please, she said. Let me explain. I should have closed the door. I didn't. She stepped inside slowly, looking around my small living room like she had never really seen it before. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, sitting down. It started when Mark lost his job. I was scared. I thought you would miss it. You thought I would notice my life savings disappearing? I asked. She flinched. I thought you trusted us. I trusted my son, I said. You used that. Tears ran down her face. If you drop the case, she whispered, we'll give some of it back. Some. That word told me everything. No, I said. Her face hardened. Then you leave me no choice, she said quietly. She stood and walked out without another word. 3 days later, the papers arrived. Court date. Evaluation order. Temporary freeze on my accounts. They had already touched my money again. I felt sick. Susan called me right away. They're pushing hard, she said. But so are we. That same evening, Lily called me from Mark's phone. Grandma, she whispered, Mommy is packing papers. Daddy is yelling. My chest tightened. Are you okay? Yes, she said. But Grandma, Daddy said you're sick in the head. I closed my eyes. Lily, I said gently, do you know what a lie is? Yes. Sometimes grown-ups tell them when they're scared, I said. Remember that. The evaluation day came fast. A doctor asked me questions. A social worker watched me walk, talk, think. I answered calmly. I told the truth. At the end, the doctor smiled. You're sharp, he said. Very sharp. For the first time in days, I felt hope. Then, the night before the court hearing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Margaret, Elaine's voice said softly, if you don't drop this tomorrow, I'll make sure you never see the children again. My hands shook. You wouldn't, I said. I already have, she replied. Check your email. The line went dead. I opened my laptop. There it was. A filed request for full custody, claiming I was a danger. Claiming I was unstable. Claiming I had threatened them. My heart slammed against my ribs. They weren't just trying to silence me anymore. They were trying to erase me from my grandchildren's lives. I slammed the laptop shut, tears finally spilling over. Then I wiped my face. No, I said aloud. You don't get to do that. I picked up my phone and called Susan. They crossed the line, I said. There was a pause. Then she said, "Then tomorrow we end this." The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with my head high. Elaine sat on one side, Mark beside her, not looking at me. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Susan leaned toward me and whispered, "Are you ready?" I nodded. But before the judge could speak, Elaine suddenly stood up and shouted, "She's lying. She planned all of this." Gasps filled the room. The judge slammed the gavel. And at that exact moment, the courtroom doors swung open, and a man I had never seen before walked in, holding a folder with my name on it. My stomach dropped, because I knew, somehow, he wasn't there for them. He was there for me. The man walked down the aisle of the courtroom with calm steps, like he belonged there. He wore a dark suit and carried a thick folder pressed tight against his chest. The room whispered around him. Elaine stopped breathing. Mark finally looked up. The judge frowned. "Sir, this is a closed hearing," she said. "Who are you?" The man stopped at the front. "My name is Daniel Brooks," he said clearly. "I'm a forensic accountant. I was subpoenaed this morning." My heart jumped. Susan slowly stood. "Your Honor," she said, "this witness was added last night after we received new evidence." Elaine shook her head wildly.
No.
"No, that's not. This is not happening." The judge looked down at her. "Sit down," she said sharply. Elaine collapsed into her chair. Daniel Brooks opened his folder. "I was hired to review the financial activity connected to Mrs. Margaret Lewis," he said. "Specifically, transactions made during her hospitalization and recovery." The judge nodded. "Proceed." He didn't look at Elaine. He didn't look at Mark. He looked straight at me, and his eyes were kind. "What I found," he said, "was not confusion. It was control." The room went still. He turned a page. Over a period of 11 months, more than $200,000 was transferred out of Mrs. Lewis's accounts. Mark sucked in a breath. Elaine whispered, "That's a lie." Daniel didn't pause. "These transfers were made using a power of attorney that appears to have been activated while Mrs. Lewis was under anesthesia." Susan stood taller beside me. "The signatures," Daniel continued, "were copied.
Traced.
Not original." Elaine jumped to her feet again. "You can't prove that." Daniel lifted another page. "Actually," he said, "I can." He passed documents to the bailiff, who handed them to the judge. "The pressure patterns don't match," Daniel said. "The timing doesn't match. And the email trail shows planning." The judge's eyes moved quickly as she read. Elaine's face twisted. "Mark," she whispered, grabbing his arm. "Say something." Mark looked like he might be sick.
"There's more," Daniel said.
My chest tightened. "The funds were not only used for household expenses," he said. "They were used to pay off personal debt, credit cards, and a private account opened solely in Elaine Carter's name." Elaine screamed. "Stop," she shouted. "This is harassment." The judge slammed the gavel. "One more outburst, and you will be removed." Elaine sank back down, shaking. Daniel took a breath. "Finally," he said, "there was an attempt to move Mrs. Lewis's home into a trust she did not authorize." Gasps filled the courtroom. I felt dizzy. Mark's head snapped toward Elaine. "The house," he whispered. "You said that wasn't real." Elaine said nothing. The judge leaned back slowly. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "did you attempt to gain guardianship to complete these transfers?" Elaine's mouth opened.
Closed.
"Yes," she whispered. Mark stood up, so fast his chair fell backward. "You tried to take my mother's house?" he shouted. The judge raised her voice. "Mr. Lewis, sit down." Mark didn't listen. He turned to Elaine. "You told me it was just paperwork. You told me." She agreed. Elaine looked up at him, tears streaking her face. "I did it for us," she said. "For the kids." "For the kids," he repeated. "You destroyed my mother." The judge banged the gavel again. "Enough."
She turned to me.
"Mrs. Lewis," she said, "based on this evidence, I am denying the guardianship request effective immediately." My knees nearly gave out. She wasn't done. "I am also ordering a full criminal investigation into the misuse of funds," she continued. "And I am restoring full control of all accounts to Mrs. Lewis." Elaine let out a broken sob. Susan squeezed my hand. The judge looked at Elaine. You are not to remove the children from Mrs. Lewis's life without court approval, she said. Any attempt to do so will have consequences. I closed my eyes. Relief washed over me. Hot, shaking, real. But the judge's voice turned colder. Mrs. Carter, she said, you should also be aware that the district attorney has been notified. Elaine screamed again. Mark turned to me, his face crumpling. Mom, he said, I didn't know it went this far. I looked at him. Really looked. You should have asked, I said quietly. The hearing ended in chaos. Elaine was pulled aside by her lawyer. Mark stood alone, hands shaking. Susan hugged me. You did it, she whispered. But as I walked out of the courtroom, my phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. I stopped in the hallway and opened it. You think this is over? You don't know everything yet. Check the safety deposit box. My heart dropped. I stared at the screen. Susan noticed my face. Margaret, she asked, what is it? I swallowed hard.
There's more, I said.
And deep down, I knew the worst truth was still waiting to be uncovered. I didn't tell Susan about the message right away. Some truths need quiet before they can breathe. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the house silent except for the ticking clock. The words from the message burned in my mind.
Check the safety deposit box.
There was only one box that could mean my box. I hadn't opened it in years. After my husband died, I put important papers there, deeds, insurance forms, letters, and then life kept moving. I trusted that what I locked away would stay safe. I was wrong. The next morning, Susan went with me to the bank. She insisted.
Her jaw was tight the whole drive.
If there's more evidence, she said, we handle it the right way. The banker recognized me. He smiled kindly and led us to a small private room. When the box slid open, my hands trembled. Inside, things were not where they should have been. Folders were missing, replaced with copies. Some papers were gone entirely. And at the bottom of the box was something I had never put there. A sealed envelope.
My name was written on it. Susan looked at me.
Do you want me to open it?
No, I said.
This one is mine. I broke the seal. Inside were documents, real ones this time. Originals. My original house deed. My late husband's will. And a handwritten note. Elaine's handwriting. You never deserved all of this. You were already fading. I just helped things along. My knees buckled. Susan caught me before I fell. That note wasn't just cruel. It was a confession. Susan exhaled slowly. Margaret, she said, this changes everything. Within days, the district attorney added new charges.
Forgery.
Elder abuse. Identity theft. Attempted property seizure. Elaine was arrested 2 weeks later. Mark called me from a number I almost didn't answer. Mom, he said, his voice broken. She's blaming me now. I closed my eyes. I warned you, I said softly. I warned you when silence still mattered. There was a long pause. I lost everything, he whispered. I thought of the nights I went hungry, the pain in my knee, the lies told about my mind. You lost my trust first, I said. And that was your choice. He cried. I let him. Then I hung up. The court awarded temporary custody arrangements that protected my time with Lily and Noah. Supervised visits only for Elaine. Therapy ordered for everyone. The judge looked directly at me during the final hearing. Mrs. Lewis, she said, your strength stopped a cycle of abuse. I nodded. My voice wouldn't come. Months passed. My money was returned. My house was secured. My name was cleared. But the real healing came quietly. Saturday mornings with Lily and Noah. Pancakes. Laughter. Questions that no longer carried fear. One afternoon, Lily hugged me tight and said, Grandma, you're very brave. I smiled and kissed her hair. No, I said. I just finally told the truth. On the next Mother's Day, there was another envelope. This one was handmade. Crayons. Stickers. Crooked letters. Inside it said, Thank you for protecting us. We love you. I held it to my chest and felt peace settle where pain once lived. Elaine tried to take my life from me quietly. Instead, she gave me my voice back. And that was the revenge she never saw coming.